Hi everyone, welcome to my today's video. Today's subject is the Pucará aircraft. The Pucará aircraft was built by Argentine for counterinsurgency operation. This aircraft has started being built in the 1970s, and its usage by Argentine is intertwined with its turbulent history. And the last place where this aircraft has seen combat is in Tamil Eelam. But this aircraft is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the comparison of the counterinsurgency that took place in both places, in Argentine and in Tamil Eelam. So let's start with today's subject. Argentine's aeronautical industry was already started in 1912, and in the 20s they built their first foreign planes under license. Already then they wanted to build their own aircraft, but with the mid-40s they gained a boost through some foreign brainpower.
Buenas noches, mein Führer. Ja.
Many German engineers and technicians were hired by Argentine after the end of the Second World War without the worry of being arrested. And with their help, Argentine became the 8th country and the first country from Latin America to manufacture jet aircrafts. And as the threat of guerrilla warfare emerged, Argentine wanted to build a counterinsurgency aircraft. That means they required a slow aircraft that had a lot of endurance and a lot of firepower and was very resistant. And for that, the Pucará was built. And the Pucará had its first test flight in 1969, and in the midst of the 70s, its deliveries began. And this Pucará aircraft is intertwined with Argentine's history, especially when it comes with its darker period during the so-called Dirty War. To understand this, we have to look on a short summary of Argentine's history. Argentine is a European colonial product. Compared to its neighboring countries like Bolivia or Peru, its population is overwhelmingly from European descent, especially from Spain and Italy. This is related to some factors during the colonial period and afterwards. During the colonial conquest, the indigenous population was devastated, and this continued even after the independence when Argentine wanted to extend its territory. And for that, they undertook genocidal campaigns where they drove out the indigenous populations in places like Patagonia. They encouraged millions of Europeans to come and settle down in Argentine so that their nation can be whitened. After a civil war that followed the independence, Argentine enjoyed a relative stable period. This time, they were one of the wealthiest countries in the world. But everything changed with the Great Depression of 1929, and soon the first military coup of many began. And in the following decade, that was very chaotic, one person named Juan Domingo Perón gained popular support among the masses and became the Argentine's president in 1946. He and his wife built the ideology named Peronism. Peronism is still relevant today in Argentine. During his first tenure, he strengthened the trade unions, introduced higher wages, paid leaves, pensions, and invested in free healthcare and free education. And besides that, he promoted the local industries and nationalized many assets of Argentine. And his wife's foundation distributed aid directly to the poor. But Perón was ousted through a military coup in 1955. Afterwards, his ideology of Peronism was banned. And through that, and inspired by the Cuban Revolution, many young Argentinians got radicalized and believed in the armed resistance against repeated military coups, against poverty, and against US domination of their economy. During this time, two major guerrilla forces emerged. One was the ERP, and the second one were left-wing Peronists named the Montoneros. But many in the Argentinian society, and even within the Peronist movement, feared a Cuban-like revolution. And for that, right-wing militias emerged to fight the insurgency. This rift erupted as Perón gained power in 1973. As he returned from exile, left-wing Peronists who were welcoming Perón were massacred by right-wing Peronists, and Perón sided with the right wing. 1 year after resuming power, he died, and afterwards his wife took over the power. Through that, the government even became more right, because a right-wing death squad named the AAA dominated the government. A full-blown insurgency broke out. The ERP and the Montoneros started an insurgency in the Tucumán province. And against this, Argentine conducted its first counterinsurgency operation named Operation Independencia. And during this Operation Independencia in December 1975, the Pucarás had their baptism of fire and were involved in the fighting. Despite huge losses on both sides, the ERP and the Montoneros weren't defeated. Despite Argentine used terror tactics like extrajudicial killings, torture, and enforced disappearances against the guerrillas and its civilian supporters, preluding the upcoming Dirty War. The military blamed the civilian government for the lack of success, and so they made a coup. Again! And through that, Videla came to power in 1976. With him in the power, he started a huge counterinsurgency operation named the Dirty War. And in the following 8 years, up to 30,000 people disappeared. And in the beginning of the 80s, the ERP and the Montoneros were broken. Despite this success, the widespread terror and the economical crisis increased the unpopularity of the military regime. To tackle this, the military regime invaded the Falkland Islands in 1982 to divert its population. And for the defense of these newly conquered islands, they used up to 24 Pucarás. And in the Falkland Wars, Britain was able to reconquer these islands and was able to destroy between 8 to 9 Pucarás and captured 11 of them. This military debacle led to the downfall of the Argentine's military dictatorship in 1983. And it took up to a decade till the Pucarás saw combat again. And this time they fought against another insurgency, and they were called the Tamil Tigers. And in November 1992, Sri Lanka and Argentine signed a contract worth of $11 million for the purchase of 4 Pucará aircrafts. At that time, Sri Lanka lacked of military aircrafts, and with the purchase of Pucará, Sri Lanka gained massive firepower, and the Pucará aircrafts had ejection seats, which increased the survivability of its pilots, which were rare at that time too. In the end of 1992, 15 Sri Lankan Air Force personnel, including pilots, technicians, and mechanics, went to Argentine to receive training. And the first Pucará reached Sri Lanka on the 30th December of 1992. The other ones followed on the 11th of January 1993, the 2nd March of 94, and in April 94. One of the first battles in Tamil Eelam was during Operation Ideyabumi, as the LTT attacked the Sri Lankan military base in Manalaru. And soon they saw combat during Operation Tavala, where the LTT attacked the Punagari camp. What's noteworthy is that during the time, at least 4 Argentinian personnel were present in Tamil Eelam to support the Sri Lankan Air Force. The pilots stayed for 6 months, where others stayed up to 1.5 years. Major fighting broke out again in 1995 as Eelam War 3 started. This time, Sri Lanka wanted to capture Jaffna again. For that, they launched the Operation Leap Forward to secure a perimeter around the Belali airport, the only Sri Lankan stronghold on the Jaffna Peninsula. They distributed leaflets to the Tamil civilians in the area of fighting that they should seek refuge in places of worship. As Tamil civilians gathered in the church of Navali, Pucará aircrafts bombed that church, and this massacre resulted in the deaths of at least 147 Tamil civilians.
It's okay. I'll show them. We will show them all.
For nearly a week after this operation started, there was no resistance from the Tigers. But this changed with the 14th of July, as the Tigers launched its own counterattack named Pulipaichal. And in this massive fighting, the Tigers caused massive casualties amongst the Sri Lankan soldiers. They also targeted a Pucará aircraft with the surface-to-air missiles and shot it down. And the pilot wasn't able to pull its ejection seat and died. 2 days later, as the Tigers sunk the Sri Lankan supply ship named Editara, the Sri Lankan offensive was stopped. Despite this huge success, Sri Lanka was able to conquer Jaffna in the end of 1995. But they also realized that the Pucarás were very vulnerable to the Tigers. And for that, they decided to purchase MiG-27 and Kefir jets. But the Pucarás were still being used till their decommissioning in 1999. They were even used during the Operation Jesiguru, where they flew at least 13 sorties. And Sri Lanka even lost another Pucará in 1997 in Mataglapu, and it's not known if it were the Tigers who shot it down or if it was an accident. The Pucará aircraft were specifically designed for counterinsurgency operations. That they failed in the battlefields of Tamil Eelam shows that the Tamil Tigers weren't a typical insurgency phenomenon. But besides this, it's evident to understand that the Pucará is a product of Argentine's counterinsurgency war and its dirty war. And this dirty war is a part of the US operation named Condor. And through this operation, they supported many military dictatorships across Latin America to counter the spread of communism. And the French also helped Argentine with its knowledge gained during the Algerian War. It's evident and we listen to the testimonies of the survivors. Some survivors claimed that the military dictatorship had trained dogs to rape the inmates.
You know nothing of the bottomless malice within the human heart.
But this dirty war was also very important because through this war, the term of enforced disappearances was coined. Similarly to Argentine, Tamil Eelam faced also massive enforced disappearances throughout the whole Eelam Wars and especially in the last phase of the Eelam War 4. Despite the dying and killing is over, many mothers are searching for the disappeared children, like in many places where the bridged of the earth are living. Thank you very much for your attention. Please leave a like or a comment in the comment section, and I wish you a nice day.